futility and the heartache of life. And yet, the rabbi said at the end of the day, they kept the book on the shelves because it begins and ends with Shemayim. Right? At the final word, he says, bottom line is you got to fear God and do the mitzvahs, which is the right message. So it says, however, you have to sort through the book and try to figure out where he's going. Again, the wisest of all men, he's not going to be not writing it.
What people like listening to them, hearing them, and they feel what he feels in its way of connecting to people.
Yeah, maybe. There's a lot of, in other words, what the book is about clearly, just to read it superficially, which is always dangerous to do when you're talking about it. But when you read it superficially, when he's going through life and kind of looking at all the different experiences people have, many of which are frustrating, as he says himself, are frustrating and seem pointless. And it's interesting, one of the most striking things about, and I don't know if there's any commentary says this, but I remember being struck. He says things like, wise people and foolish people all die. Like righteous people and wicked people all die. And it struck me, and again, I don't know if I'm right about this, but maybe some commentator does say this. It's almost as if bad people always prospered and good people always suffered, which we know is great. It would always be easier because you could say, look, we have answers for that. We say, well, maybe in this world it's like the opposite because the good people suffer for their sins. In this world, bad people are rewarded in this world, and in the next world it flips. And it'll always be easier, but it actually doesn't. If anything, it just seems like totally random. You have bad things happening to good people and bad people. You have good things happening to good, so it just seems like there's no rhyme or reason at all, and it's almost harder to make sense out of it because you say, if the principle is that good people will suffer for their sins, but why does that good person have a good life? So then you have no explanation at all. So he goes on, and some of it may be commiserating, some of it may be really saying, this is the way people experience it. And I think he says himself, again, some of the verses it's hard to know exactly how to translate them, and even if you can translate them, you have to know what the commentaries say. But in some of the verses, it's like, this is also foolish, and I think in some cases it means, well, I had this thought process, but I realized that was also a mistake. So he himself is kind of thinking about, you take this approach. He definitely says things like, I tried this, and I experimented with that, and I see that it's all, the rabbis say that, it starts off with the famous line, all vanity of vanities, all vanity, havel, havalim, I call havel. Just to translate it for those people. So he says, it says, Ilu Adam Acher Amar Kain Hayit Yomer, Shem Allah Asaf Shtei Prutot Miyama. If anybody else would make a statement like that, I would say maybe the guy never scraped together 2 pennies in his life. But it says Shlomo HaMelech, it says silver in Jerusalem was as plentiful as stone. Like the silver market dropped to the floor because there was, so he says it's all meaningless. He says he's seen it all, he had it all, he tried it all, and it's really nothing. So he can say.
In jail, he's a completely good person. Made a bad choice. And now he's in prison with all these,
right.
Not people, period.
Right.
Murders is that who lot people. So it's like, but he's still there.
Right.
So I'm thinking what Rabbi's saying is like, people say, well, the foolish die and the ritual elders, but everybody dies. They're all going to land in the same spot. But if you have that Torah perspective, you have to start that Torah, there's a difference.
Right. I mean, you're
so
saying
you're not going to abandon because since we all die and since we all die, I might as well be like him.
Right. You're saying. I think you're saying that 2 people. And I think what you're saying reminds me of a midrash. Actually, Rabbi Ackerman had it in the Bar Torah just a couple of weeks ago. It says that Moshe and Aaron. It says this a few times. They died. They couldn't enter the land because they hit the rock. Moshe hit the rock. And Rashi says that the Torah always spells that out. Why? It says it gives a mashal, a metaphor. There's 2 women were being punished by the court. One of them committed adultery. The other one ate fruit on the Shemitah that wasn't whatever. So she said, do me a favor. I want you to announce to everyone what I'm being punished for. I don't want them to think like the other lady. So it says Moshe Rabbeinu said, all the Jews had to die in the desert because they didn't want to enter the land. It was Tishah B'Av, right? They cried. They said whatever. That was on top of previous sins. It was a golden calf. And the only thing I did wrong was hit the rock. So Hashem always spells out they died, and Moshe died, but for very different reasons. Moshe died because of hitting the rock. It was the only thing he did wrong. So you look at the idea that as a superficial glance, you say, well, they all had the same. Everyone in that generation died, but no, it wasn't the same at all. You can look at one detail and think it's the same thing, and it's really not. Right? I think that kind of like the example you were giving. And that's the nature of what this world is like.
Was there any nevuah left at the time of Shlomo? Did he have anybody to advise?
Certainly. I mean, the prophecy continued until the beginning of the Second Temple. The last prophets were. I don't know if Shlomo himself was a prophet, although he definitely had his dream where Hashem came to him and he promised him wisdom. There were other. I mean, even David HaMelech, like King David. I don't know that he was a prophet, but he had prophets that brought messages to him. Shmuel Hanavi, God Hanavi, Son Hanavi. So it's interesting. It's think about it. He was a great people of history, but I don't know that he was a prophet himself, and yet so Hashem decides what people need, what their role is. Anyway, okay, so as far as Tishah B'Av is concerned, yeah.
Are you going to, Rabbi, teach us anything about what happens when Tishah B'Av starts on Shabbos?
Okay, so this year actually, the actual fast day is Sunday as opposed to some other years. I think it was last year or the year before where it was on Shabbos and pushed off to Sunday. It does make a difference. It's actually worse this year because, when it's pushed off, anytime a fast is pushed off, it's more lenient simply because we mentioned it last week, because it's a reschedule. When it's a rain date, it's a little. Also, a Tishah B'Av specifically, we say that they lit the temple on fire in the afternoon and then it burned into the next day, and therefore some of the customs carry over after the fast is completed, because really they would have made the 10th day into a fast as well, because the temple was burning, but it was they limited it to the 9th. But it's appropriate to observe some customs of mourning on the 10th. Now, if Tishah B'Av falls on Shabbos and we observe the fast on the 10th, then as soon as Sunday night comes, it's already the 11th. There's really no reason to continue. Whereas this year, again, where the Sunday actually is the 9th of, then Sunday evening is the 10th. So some of those customs do continue. So as far as Shabbos is concerned, so this year Shabbos is Erev Tishah B'Av. Now the customs of Erev Tishah B'Av are nothing. They're not that much specifically, except the Suda HaMafsekes, right? The final meal, which is eaten. It's just like bread and an egg. We dip it in ashes and we eat it alone, and we sit on the floor. We don't do any of that stuff on Shabbos, because on Shabbos you can't have any customs of mourning. We are supposed to eat. We aren't supposed to do anything. So, you shouldn't downgrade your usual observance of Shabbos. Now, there is, I think, some discussion. There are people who said maybe the Suda Shlishit, the third meal, should have some aspect. But basically, the bottom line is it shouldn't be different from what you usually do. Now, if you always eat it alone and it's a simple meal, so this Shabbos I want to have a get together with my friends, then that may not be appropriate. But whatever you usually do, you should do. But you do have to finish by sunset, which is unusual, because usually on Shabbos, as long as you start before sunset, you can keep eating even into the night until you finish. And once you finish, then you have to make Havdalah before you eat. In this case, you have to stop. This is really a halakhic concept that, we always have certain overlap. So once the sun goes down, we're already in the period where it might be Sunday, it might be Shabbos. And normally, we say, well, we're still observing Shabbos. We're not going to do work yet because it might be Shabbos, and we're not going to make Havdalah yet, so you might as well keep eating. Whereas now, it might be Shabbos. We certainly can't do any work, even though the sun has gone down. On the other hand, it might be Sunday, and Tishah B'Av is a significant enough fast that the rabbi said you can't not fast. So we don't eat and we don't fast. We don't do anything overt. We'll still sit on regular chairs or wear regular shoes. But as soon as Shabbos is over, so let's say if you're home, you say Baruch Hamadim and Kodesh L'Kol. If you're in shul, you say Baruch Hu. Whatever it is that you do that marks the end of Shabbos, then immediately you take off your shoes. So that's why if people are going to be in shul, they discuss what to do. You maybe have your slippers there from before Shabbos. You're not going to go to shul wearing your slippers because it's still Shabbos. How can you walk through the street wearing slippers on Shabbos? So maybe, I think over here, I was just talking to Rabbi Ackerman about it yesterday. Probably what will happen, someone Huntington as well, people are not even going to be in shul. They'll probably be home and then come to shul after Shabbos is over. So, and if most people will be driving to shul, so when Shabbos is over, when the time comes, you say Baruch Hanav Yom Kodesh L'Chol. At that point, you can turn on lights and write and drive. So you can also at that point take off your shoes and sit on the floor. And we don't do Havdalah because we can't drink. So we do that on Sunday night, which any week, if a person misses Havdalah, they can do it until Tuesday, or through Tuesday, because it's the first half of the week. So we don't have to do it until Tuesday, we wait till Sunday night. And until then, no eating. But obviously we do work, so we say Baruch Hanav Yom Kodesh L'Chol. That issue is learning Torah. So on Tisha B'Av we don't learn Torah except for those areas that are appropriate for Tisha B'Av, like either areas, kind of like a person sitting Shivas in the same boat, only things that relate to mourning, so laws of mourning, or the story of Tisha B'Av, like Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Book of Eicha, certain other. It says if you get to any cheerful psukim, you have to skip them. It says at certain midrashim, there's certain sections in the Gemara, like the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, other stories that it's a few pages in Masechet Gittin which are popular. And there are others. There's a list of topics that are appropriate, and also what people say, any Sifrei Musar, even if they're not particularly depressing, but books like Mesilat Yesharim and Sharei, books that help you improve yourself, because as we spoke about in previous weeks, the whole purpose of the fast is to bring us to Teshuvah. Now, unlike Yom Kippur, there is no real mention on Tisha B'Av of repentance. We don't even say Tachanun, which is an interesting discussion in and of itself. So, and we don't say Avinu Malkeinu or anything like that. We don't do that, but that's because the nature of the day is a day of mourning. But again, each day has Tisha B'Av. I don't know, it's kind of more belongs to the realm of philosophy or Kabbalah. But Tisha B'Av does set us on a trajectory that ends with the Yom Noraim, because after Tisha B'Av we have 7 weeks. We have the 3 weeks that we're in now. Each week the Haftarah is something about the upcoming Korban and the destruction, and then the 7 weeks after Tisha B'Av, starting with Nachamu, we get into consolation and prophecies and redemption. That takes us all the way till Rosh Hashanah. And if you look at it that way, although there's no direct connection, halachically speaking, the period that follows Tisha B'Av, as we kind of reorient ourselves and we think about redemption, it takes us into the period when we're beginning to improve. So you can look at it that way, but from the halacha just says simply that the purpose of this is for Teshuvah. So even though there's no vidui on, no alchet on Tisha B'Av, the purpose is to think about what we've lost. The catalyst to improvement is to recognize the loss. So Tisha B'Av is a way to focus on loss and destruction, but for the purpose of Teshuvah. Therefore, studying books of Musar is appropriate on that day. So the question is, again, from a halachic perspective, what about the day before, an Erev Tisha B'Av? So there is a basis to say that from Chatzos and onwards, from midday, which is ballpark of 1 o'clock, on Tisha B'Av, an Erev Tisha B'Av afternoon, not to study. And this is a debatable subject. There were great rabbis who came on both sides. Some said you should avoid and you should limit yourself to those mournful topics. Other people said, but you're just not going to learn because it's hard enough on Tisha B'Av itself. People, again, this particularly people who study Torah regularly and are immersed in it, you have to, you're not into it. It's not your regular schedule. You have your usual study regimen that works for you. So limit to the absolute requirement, which is to refrain on Tisha B'Av itself. On an Erev Tisha B'Av, you can study anything. There's different opinions on that. This year is another nuance because it's Shabbos. There's another basis to be lenient because not only is it not Tisha B'Av yet and it's Shabbos. Again, there are still two opinions, but it gets that much more lenient. The exact, again, it depends. The Rama says that the custom is not to study on Erev Tisha B'Av from midday and on, except for those days that are appropriate for Tisha B'Av. Because Torah gladdens the heart, but he says this is not the law. It's technically permitted, and the reason that the custom exists is that if you could study the other things, it's more appropriate to study those sad things. Many people, do observe this custom even when it's on Shabbos, but many others are very skeptical about this. as far back as the Marashal, hundreds of years ago, and he himself studied Torah after midday and allowed other people to do it in the Vilna Gaon as well. So there's excessive stringency and others because it leads people not to study Torah.
On Tishah B'Av?
No, on Erev Tishah. No, on Tishah B'Av itself for sure. But when we're talking about even on a weekday, many people said that the Vilna Gaon and the Marashal, these people said even on a weekday, because it causes people not to study Torah. They say it's not enjoyable to study other things. It's not what they're used to doing. The person only studies what they want to, right? Studying requires. You got to be into it. You got to be turned on, and it just doesn't turn people on. They're not going to just end up. They're going to end up doing something else. So he says if someone wants to be lenient, we wouldn't stop them from being lenient, even on a weekday of Tishah B'Av. And however, there are those that even on Shabbos who don't study. So he says.
But if you're not allowed to do anything morning on Shabbos, why would you learn?
Again,
so why would you not?
Why would you refrain?
Well, on Shabbos also you could study the other stuff on Shabbos.
Rabbi just said there's no hope that some people on Shabbos have to want to do.
Right.
So, but that's a sign of mourning.
It's not a sign of mourning because you're not doing anything. Refraining from doing something is not a sign of mourning, unless they do say like by Shalosh Shudas, if you go out of your way to eat, a more subdued meal, it might be. But basically, the person will just be learning other topics, and that's the premise. The premise is, I have some time to study, or I'll say I have an hour, right, and I go to Torah any time, and I see a bunch of lectures. So choose one on Tishah B'Av. There's hundreds and hundreds of lectures. Choose one. The counter argument is
that the same thing as not being allowed to study on.
So apparently it's not.
Tishah B'Av, so now you're doing it. It's the same, but it's Shabbos, so it's like I don't understand. But then what does that mean? That's sign of mourning. Like physical, like shus, etc. But like because we can't learn.
You're right. I guess it's a little bit. It's again, not wearing shoes is an obvious sign of mourning. Anyone who walks by and sees you're not wearing shoes, why you're not wearing shoes? Whereas, why didn't you go to the shelf and take out a book and study something? Who knows? There could be 1,000 reasons. You're not overtly. In fact, that you may be doing something because it's mourning. Is not a sign means that visible to the outsider. That's the reason. So again, even when a person's studying Shabbat, there's a similar calculation. There's certain things that are observed even on Shabbos because they're not obvious, but things that are obvious to others, not because other people will see it, but because you don't want to do things that are outwardly. It's kind of a greater kind of violation of the spirit of Shabbos to do something which is visible and discernible to the outside observer. So apparently with the learning thing, I guess, again, the premise he says to begin with is that it's not forbidden from according to the letter of the law, but it's forbidden because better to learn things that are appropriate to the subject of the day. So we're talking about a person on Shabbos afternoon, they go to shul, and they pull a book off the shelf and study, and if you looked over the shoulder, you would see they're studying something laws of Tishah B'Av. Okay? You can study it anytime you want. That happens to be studying that. It makes sense. Tishah B'Av is tomorrow. It's not a sign of mourning to do that. On the other hand, it's not necessarily going to be the best learning that you're ever going to do because he says, they find it painful to learn something they're not accustomed to learning. And even I, in our great sinfulness, I as one of them. This is the one of the Magen Avraham. He says, I have the same problem myself. So he says, so on a weekday, there were people who were very skeptical about this. So his Mishnah Berurah's bottom line is, if you want to be lenient, we wouldn't stop you. On Shabbos, he says, there's an even greater argument. And he says, it would appear that you can rely on this since even on the weekday, even if you're brilliant. So as far as on the weekday studying after midday, he says, we wouldn't stop somebody who wants to learn. As far as on Shabbos, he says you can rely on it, kind of more of a green light to rely on. Even on Shabbos, it sounds like, if you feel you can do just as well, with the other stuff. So then there is, there's different opinions on it as far as the learning goes. Okay, so that's that. As far as
You also have to be careful not to drink more with the idea of preparing or.
So you could. It's a similar thing to taking a nap. Let's say Shavuot. Well, let's say you plan to stay up all night on Shavuot, and it's Saturday night. So it says you could take a nap, even if you don't usually take a nap, but you're not supposed to say that you're taking a nap to stay up all night. Same thing with the eating and drinking. You can eat and drink as much as you want, but you shouldn't verbally say that it's to be able to fast. But you should. It actually says in the halacha that, again, not specifically on Shabbos, but in general, even on a weekday, you should make sure that you eat adequately to be able to have the strength for the fast. The last meal of Suda Hanafsekas should be simple and limited. But prior to that, you don't indulge, don't stuff yourself, but eat enough. It says you should not skip. You should eat enough so that you'll be. It says is. The custom is to have a little bit more, a little bit extra in the previous meal to prevent the person from being harmed. And this is even during the weekday. And there's even an allusion to that in the Midrash Eicha. But if somebody can afflict themselves and want to be more stringent, that's a holy person. So a holy person maybe can limit their eating on Erev Tisha B'Av. But for a normal person, regular average person, you should eat a little bit more earlier in the day. And if it's on Sunday, then you can eat meat and drink wine even in the final meal. Even like the feast of King Solomon in his heyday was described as a very extravagant meal. Eat whatever you want, eat to your heart's content, as long as you stop by the time sunset comes. Which is kind of weird because even on a regular Shabbos where you're eating, stale challah and a little bit of cake, you can eat as long as you want. But here you can have, steak, but you got to stop as soon as the sun goes down.
They give in the bulletin.
Yeah, we'll put all those times and make sure people know. Havdalah again, but there's going to be sunset is a time that you stop eating. Nightfall, there's 3 stars, like any Shabbos, the time that you can drive or do other things. And the following night, nightfall again is when you can start eating and make Havdalah and start eating. Take Kiddush Lamana.
I don't know this halacha in general. Like flossing or something like that, like to make sure you're not, okay.
Flossing is okay. There's nothing wrong with flossing. The issues would be if you know that it's going to cause bleeding. Causing bleeding is a problem. But again, because bleeding is undesirable and harmful, it's not considered a constructive act or a desired act. And unless you know for a fact that it's going to bleed, you're allowed to do it because it's unintended and unwanted. A real toothbrushing has other issues to it.
No, I know,
but a dry toothbrush with no water, no toothpaste is okay. Regular Shabbos. There's some people who have special Shabbos toothbrush, which there is a reason to do that, but it's not strictly required. With soap with water or toothpaste, you have problems with the schit of squeezing, kind of like using a rag, and issue with the toothpaste like smearing or rub. But without the dry brush, just the dry brush doesn't have create any squeezing. Schita. It's questionable because it's not really fabric. Like here, they say here, but you wouldn't wash your hair and wring it out on Shabbos. That would be at least rabbinically a problem. So, but the point is the brush. You when you run the brush against your teeth, you're extracting liquid from between the bristles. So if you took a dish rag and wiped the table with it, the problem would be that it gets saturated and you squeeze out the liquid. That's forbidden. So with the toothbrush, there's a similar calculation. It's not, it's questionable because the bristles don't really absorb any water. They're synthetic and they're not absorbent. But I think the water gets caught between the bristles, and there's some basis to at least, so it's not right. It shouldn't. Mouthwash, yeah. Again, before sunset. Right. Yeah. You should. I mean, those are, again, those are basic things. The idea is that we don't look for, again, except for the holy people, we don't look for additional. When it comes to these things like fasting, we do the law. We're not looking to do extra. We should be extra in terms of our feelings and our sense of connection and our desire to improve ourselves. That's where we should go the extra mile. We don't need to go the extra mile in terms of fasting for most people. That's Right.
Rabbi Grocery, can I make a recommend? I don't know if this is a good recommendation or not, but they have dental swabs that I actually use, and I just thought about it just now that I use on Shabbos.
What do they do exactly?
We used to use them in the nursing home and for our patients, and I find them very good for myself. On Shabbos, they have them with flavor and without flavor, and you don't have to apply a lot of pressure on them. They don't have any. Some don't have any type of like toothpaste or no menthol, and they're dental swabs. And so I use them on Shabbos to like run.
What do they? What is the tip made out of?
So it's some of them are made out of cotton, and some of them are made of a different type of soft texture. And I pre-open each individual package before Shabbos, and
So it's rubbed against your teeth and has like a soft head.
Yes.
So in principle, I think that would be okay. The issue, and actually, I have this question about the toothbrush as well. The question in my mind would be that if you use them, they're going to absorb moisture from your mouth, and at some point you may be, as they get saturated, you may be squeezing. So I could look into that. Like, in principle, it's certainly not your intention, and it doesn't happen right away, but it might be that if you use them, through your whole mouth, by the time you're finished, you may be getting into an issue of wrinkling out or squeezing. So I could try to research that a little further. Maybe I can look up the product because I'm not sure if I'm picturing it exactly right. If you send me email me like a product name or something, I can look at what it is, and then we can discuss it further.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thanks. So just to finish up, so it says in the evening, late in the day on the 9th of Av was when the temple was lit on fire and it burned through the whole next day until sunset on the 10th of Av, as we said. And that's why after midday on Sunday, things actually lighten up a little bit. We sit on regular chairs. We'll put the time for that also, but it's usually around 1 o'clock. And that's again because the temple was lit on fire, it diffused the anger because then Hashem poured out his anger on the building, not on the people. So it actually kind of the sin was atoned for. But the reason for therefore is that because of this, we don't fast for the whole second day, but the custom is not to eat meat or wine even after Tishah B'Av is over, even Sunday night. So the Shulchan Aruch seems to say the entire 10th day, but the Ramah says, I don't know what the Sfaradim do, but the Ramah says, at least for the Ashkenazim, not past midday, so until about 1 o'clock roughly on Monday, to avoid meat and wine. This is if, like we have this year, it actually is Sunday. If Tishah B'Av on Shabbos and you skip to Sunday, then you'd be allowed to eat meat already on Monday morning because that's already 11th day. But you still wouldn't do it on Sunday night because just kind of the morning of the day is still kind of carrying over into the night. So Havdalah was there. So the truth is, there was a question this past Shabbos. What did we do for Havdalah? So there's different customs. I actually made Havdalah on. Actually, I wasn't home, but we at the yeshiva, I think they use wine, grape juice. Rabbi Edelman did. Some people don't. Some people use beer. It is true that we don't drink wine during the 9 days, like in for Ashkenazim. The argument would be that on Shabbos we do drink wine, grape juice for the Kiddush. So it's kind of an old question. There are other areas where this question comes up as well. Is Havdalah, part of Shabbos, or do you get the Shabbos license or not? So there's different opinions on it. Many people do use wine for Havdalah. Some people don't. As far as so again, if you did Havdalah on wine past Motzei Shabbos, you could do it again.
That's fine because you said no wine till midday.
Right. So I believe the same. Again, I guess I shouldn't say not obvious, not a given. This is actually Tishah B'Av, but no one would mean no one outside of Havdalah. Okay. Just like on Shabbos itself, we can use.
I really don't want to own beer.
Right. But beer is there's a legitimate basis for beer. There's a reason for it. There's a basis to use beer rather than wine. We make it Sunday night.
Sunday night.
Yeah.
I thought you only let you wine on.
Yeah, he says even benching, if a person normally Berachas Hamazon there, we don't do it that commonly. We do it maybe when there's 10 people. But if people would bench and they say Berachas Hamazon on a cup of wine, you can do that too. If it's Sunday night, you're having whatever bread and eggs to break your fast, and if your custom is to bench with a cup of wine, you can do it because it's for a mitzvah.
Have warnings for that, for this schedule.
So that's another solution. And some people will do it on beer. Some people will do it on wine, but they won't drink the wine. They'll give it to a kid. But some people just drink the wine. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, so I do, and I think the yeshiva they do. Right. It's tricky with a kid. You have to have a kid who's old, not too old, not to be the right age, old enough for chinuch, but not old enough for mourning. Because similarly, some of the other restrictions of laundry and bathing, haircuts also should be observed until midday on Monday. Yeah. Remember that bungalow colony where they have a lottery system, and the women would all take numbers, and then as soon as and our bungalow was right near the laundry room. So but no, you just have to take a number. And as soon as the time came, everyone was like lining up to do it. Anyway, okay, so we'll send you out all in the newsletter, so everyone will get all the details. But those are the basics. It should be easy. Fast, maybe we'll get it without fasting if Mashiach comes between now and then. And then we shouldn't stop hoping. And that could be any time, any day. And so anyway, it should be meaningful. There will be a schedule. We'll have the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation is going to send their video, and maybe we'll do some other things. I think Rabbi Ackerman is going to hopefully have some seed boys here. They'll be able to do some presentation. We'll have in Huntington as well. We do a Tishah Mourning presentation, explaining some of the keynotes as we go. So there'll be hopefully some offerings we'll send out all the information. Okay. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Rabbi.